Hello, everybody, and welcome to another Social Blueprint interview where we highlight people in the community who you may or may not know. Today, it's somebody who you may know, Sonney Roth. But before we get into the interview itself, you know the deal. Like, subscribe, share, sign up to us because it's all free and it's right at your fingertips. And with that, Sonney, welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Hey, Sonney, you are somebody who you're an entrepreneur, you're a risk taker, if you will, but you've also had some success in different facets of life. And I'm just curious to start with, is that risk-taking mentality, if you will, is this something, if you could just back up for a second, that you always had it in your mind?
It's a good question, and I think it's relevant probably today because a lot of people know me in more recent times for winning the 2022 Melbourne Cup.
Absolutely.
As opposed to my old business, which was Antler Luggage, which sort of became a household brand and name. But, you know, I think I've always sort of been brought up sort of on the conservative side of business, if I could say that. But at the same time, you know, it's risk versus reward, and there's probably some good ways to describe tech startup world, and obviously, if you can call it an investment in horse racing as well.
Yeah, and I'm curious, and again, about this probabilistic type of thinking. Do you think that it's just instinct to you?
It's a hard one to sort of explain. Is it instinctive? I mean, you go with your gut feel.
Right.
And, you know, over time, and especially since I sold out of my previous, you know, business and I started investing in tech and startup world, which I've done sort of for 8 or 9 years, and now running one myself, it's something which you know, my dad always sort of told me and said, Sonny, you know, if you've got 5% doubt in a business or 5% doubt in anything, don't do it. And I think if I took that attitude on, I probably wouldn't have achieved everything that I did, even when we had the old business, you know, and we can sit here and talk about it all day long. But, you know, things like, you know, how much do you spend on marketing and advertising, and, you know, are you going to get an ROI on that sort of investment? So for me, you know, I think you just have to look at everything as best as you can. And life's, as he also said to me, is about making more right decisions than wrong decisions. But hopefully you make more right decisions than wrong decisions to get the ultimate result. Yeah,
and it's certainly, you have made more right decisions than wrong decisions. But you're also, I believe you're an accountant by trade?
Yes. Again, had to go to university and do some sort of degree and get a piece of paper before I went into the business. But my, you know, apprenticeship, you know, really was spending time out on the road with my parents and doing things that probably a lot of my friends and contemporaries didn't do from a very young age, and taking time off school and traveling the world, sitting in on meetings, falling asleep at the table. So, yes, got an accounting degree, which, you know, mum and dad wanted before I went into the family business. But at the end of the day, it was really, you know, going out on the road and cutting my teeth that way and learning how to sell.
And sales, you know, we do have a young audience here.
Yep.
In a lot of parlance, sales is like, I'd call it a dirty word, but I can't think of anybody that is not selling something.
Yeah.
Can you just talk to us a little bit about your thoughts, especially for young people out there?
Yeah.
Who maybe think they're above it.
Yeah. I mean, look, you know, I always say without sales, you don't have a business. That's the reality. And for me, you know, I think I used to always say when I sort of did my apprenticeship and once I came into the business full time, you know, and I was a door knocker, you had to walk in to a store and, you know, there was no LinkedIn back then. It was really cold calling and walking into a store and selling your wares. But at the same time, you know, when I did that, you had to identify the person on the other side of the counter and what they wanted to speak about. So for me, I would, you know, you listen and you take on board. And I think, you know, having an old box of cards, even where I used to walk into a store and, you know, you wouldn't always get the result or open that account straight away.
Right.
But if you kept showing your face and you kept following up and you showed that customer that you were passionate about what you would do and you would look after them, that probably, I guess, would separate me from a lot of our competitors, and they would have the faith to give you some orders in business ultimately.
And fast forward to today, do you still use some of those same skill sets?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, there's no difference when I came into this new business, which is sort of fulfillment technology.
Yeah.
Whilst it is a tech business, without sales, you don't have a business. So what did I bring to the table? It was, 25 plus years of dealing with most retailers in Australia, knowing how to, hope Dad you're listening to this, because, it was all the things that sort of he instilled in me was how to sell. And it was, create the need, fill the need, and close the sale. They were ultimately sort of how he was taught.
I love how you present that.
And mentored that way. Ultimately, that's sort of the hallmarks that sort of, I guess, has, given me the success that I had both in the old import wholesale world, right, and now that I've been able to apply to this new tech startup world as well.
Right. And in a new tech startup world, which is an area that you focus with a lot of young people as well. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah. So my two co-founders are now 25 years of age, but it's
right,
already been 4 years since we started the business. And, when I came in, as I say to, Greg and James, they know more about tech and that side of the business than I ever will. But I guess, what I've been able to provide is that mentorship, right, stability, and I guess, just running the business day to day in terms of making sure, you never run out of cash. That's right, probably the most important thing, and cash is king, especially in tech and startup world. But, you take on, I guess, a lot of things that, again, I've learned since I was really 9 years of age, as I explained earlier, right, going out on the road and knocking on doors is more about, what's important. Is it like looking after your best customers? Is it right, collecting your debts? Is it all that sort of, and just following up? But ultimately, relationships are everything in life and in business. And it's also who you know, not what you know. So for me to be able to come into this business and show the guys how I can knock on a door. I've also got the adage, which I think is important to sort of highlight to the viewers today. For me, no means yes. And that's something that I'm very strong about. So even though when you knock on a door and right, you attempt to open an account, it's very rare that you're going to get yes straight away and open an account. And sometimes I say to the guys, you'll get 10 no's, but eventually if you keep showing your face and you're persistent and you're passionate about what you do, that no will become a yes.
That's an incredible lesson. And most salespeople, I believe, fall down when they first hear that no. You see the head go down, the shoulders slump.
No, that makes me more determined, and it actually motivates me more because, I never give up. And that's, again, whether it was the old business, and I often tell, the guys many stories just to educate them and to give them the belief that, ultimately, if you're persistent, you'll win the ultimate prize. And I remember, stories of knocking on doors. It took me 10 years to open one of our accounts. Okay. But you know what? We eventually got there. And funnily enough, a lot of those retailers that I dealt with in the Antler and the Go Travel days, we've now been able to get on board with Rendr as well, because everyone's talking about last mile and same day delivery. Right.
And it's incredible how also those tough to get people, sometimes they become your best customers and your best advocates.
True. So testimonials, are important, and we can talk today about, marketing. And obviously marketing's changed when we're at uni, what do we learn? The 4 P's of marketing. How relevant is that? If I was at uni today, obviously the social media angle is far more important. And I was always a big believer in marketing and advertising. And, again, coming back to Dad, he'd say, Sonney, budget for 5% of your marketing spend or sales on marketing. And for me, it's also how you bought your marketing. But, marketing above the line back in the day, and that's how we built a household brand or a household name with Antler, and sponsored everything from sport, every sport. Although my wife didn't like it, Miss Universe Australia, but we try to cover every demographic. That's the reality. Today, and when we started Rendr, we wanted to again make Rendr a household name. And I always thought, if you think of the Uber of this world, if we could get Rendr to become sort of that verb, how do you want to deliver? Let's render it. That's always been our sort of ultimate goal. But today, it's more about B2B, so we're not spending as much above the line as we used to. Right.
I'm just curious, this is an in-the-weeds question. With last mile delivery, what makes it so challenging?
So
keep it in a nutshell.
Yeah, in a nutshell, the biggest issue for retailers today is inventory management. So our model is shipping from store to door. Yeah, so we can do it from a distribution center, and we can do it anywhere in Australia, regional and remote,
right,
up to 50K same day, which is incredible because at the end of the day, we're an aggregator. So we've basically aggregated every major carrier and courier into a piece of tech, and based on the algorithm and based on the profile of freight, in essence, we'll then choose the best carrier for the job, as opposed to an Uber or a DoorDash, without denigrating them. Because at the end of the day, they are our partners and they are our service providers. But if Uber or DoorDash, who only do Metro 0 to 10, fail, our technology will automatically reassign and reallocate to one of our other carriers. So we've got 1-3 cabs delivering,
right,
in regional and remote areas. So for us, I think it's sort of important to understand how far it's come. We know, last mile delivery is the future. It's
for sure.
Sustainability. It's all those things that people look for and talk about. But, when you look at what's happening in the market and standard parcels and the frustration with certain providers, without, again, denigrating anyone, why wouldn't you do same day delivery when it's probably even more, it's economically viable, but at the same time, it's going to be potentially cheaper for the retailer to actually, depending on how they present it on checkout through their website, and whether they then ask the consumer to pay for the convenience and the certainty of delivery. And they can then subsidise part of the delivery, take some from the consumer, and then we obviously have a commercial arrangement in place. That makes sense.
Absolutely. And you mentioned about the algorithm, but your skill is not building that algorithm. I guarantee that. I want to go back to picking the right partner, and specifically within your business partners. You do different things in the business, don't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So as CEO and MD, I guess, what's my major role? My major role has been to basically fund the business from day one. Right. So when I met with, Greg and James originally, and they were doing V1 during COVID, they were delivering home and hardware in Melbourne only. They were also trying to sort of develop their own crowdsourced network. And when I went and met with them, I said, guys, this is fantastic. However, why does it just have to be home and hardware? Why does it just have to be Melbourne? If I'm to get involved, it's going to be all retail categories, because I know every retailer and I've dealt with them over so many years.
Right.
We have to make it national, and I've got obviously a lot of experience in freight and logistics. So I said, if you believe in, what I'm saying, basically I'll write the business plan, I'll write the marketing plan, and I'll go and raise the funds required to get this to the next level. So very quickly set out and raised our seed capital, which is always a challenge. So we go to what we call friends, families and fools. No one take offence to that, because it's sort of buyer beware, and you have sophisticated investors, unsophisticated investors. But I think that's important for listeners to sort of understand the process. And we very quickly got our seed capital. And from there it was like, okay, we're sort of ready then to do our Series A, which was actually well documented in the AFR. And we got some well-known and sophisticated investors to support us in that round. And by doing that, basically I had knocked on a few doors through contacts to say, hey, this is what we're doing. We'd love to ship your products fast and same day from your stores. And you've got both of these two leading retailers obviously had a large footprint. But what was interesting was, as soon as I said that, they said, that sounds great, but can we actually invest in the business? Because we really like the sound of it.
Really?
Yeah. So, and I mean, look, again, it's on record, but Ahmed Fahour, who was chairman of Hair House, who ran Australia Post for a long time, and for him to say that to me gave me a great deal of confidence in what we were doing as well. Because he said, Sonney, I was trying to build something like this at Australia Post for 10 years, and if you can get this right, it's going to be, the next big thing, hopefully a unicorn, but, how do you mark success? And, that's always something that you can unpack.
Absolutely.
So, from there, we, same thing. So, global retail brands and Stevie Lowe, who's got, 250 stores, love what we're doing as well. So they were sort of our two main sort of cornerstone Series A investors. And obviously from then we've moved on and got a lot of new retailers on board, like Chemist Warehouse.
Yes.
In recent times, Petstock, National Tiles, Nutrition Warehouse, a lot of great fashion brands, but pharmacy, alcohol, pet food and convenience, they're sort of the key categories where people want things delivered fast.
Yes.
And some things people are happy to wait. But I think, like we've all seen in startup world, you just don't want to be too early to market. And I know in my heart we're on the right path and this is the future. It's just you've got to make sure that you don't run out of cash. So have supportive investors or keep building the tech. So then there's, Series B and Series C and people out there or businesses out there that want to support this, both for local and international growth opportunities, which we have because we've built the tech to be able to do that.
Definitely. Listen, you mentioned a lot of things there, Series A, Series B, Series C. One of the things that I'm thinking is they all have different risk profiles where they come in. And also, when it comes to horse racing, certainly it is a betting business, if you will. I'm curious about, again, I keep coming back to, say like and we're going to turn the conversation, I guess, to horse racing, do you think in terms of that way where obviously horse racing is a passion, but it could also be an expensive passion?
It is, yeah. Look, you definitely don't do it for the money. You need to be able to afford to do it. And it's an expensive sport and hobby. I'm still a hobbyist at this stage.
And you may lose money.
You may lose money. So it's a great analogy. And I was, as I said, doing a talk recently for a group of young entrepreneurs and tried to sort of liken the investment in tech and startup world to the investment in horse racing. Now, probably shouldn't use the word investment because it's not generally an investment. As long as the horses can pay for themselves, fantastic. And it took me sort of, whilst I've been following horses since I was really about 10 years of age, I didn't start buying or investing in horses till about 15 years ago. And funnily enough, that all came as a result of my original business with Antler because we were sponsors of Fashions on the Field. We sponsored the Victorian Racing Club. We sponsored every racing club and had above the line marketing, signage everywhere. So I think that's important to understand. But because I was around it all the time, I said, okay, I've got to buy a horse. Now, I quickly learned that if you just buy one horse and you buy the whole horse, it's not a great idea because then you've got basically 100% of the expenses.
Right.
As the journey goes on. And then a few years later, I started to realise maybe if I started to buy a smaller percentage or a share in different horses and spread the risk, that was the way to go. And it still, as I said, took quite a few years to start running, instead of running in the country, and what we call benchmark 58s to group racing. That's what it's ultimately all about. And then, started buying shares with syndicators and sort of picking the eyes out of the horses that I wanted. And you're still learning. To this very day, you still learn. Right. But you have to sort of be disciplined and have a different set of rules for different things. And you're buying yearlings, which is probably the easiest way to describe yearlings. It's a lottery, and it's very much like buying, into a startup from, seed round. Right. Whereas Gold Trip, who won the Melbourne Cup in 2022, he'd run fourth in the Arc de Triomphe in France, which is probably the best race in the world. He came to Australia. You pay a lot more money. Yes. But again, if you liken it to business, if you invested at a later stage, you decrease the risk. Now, that being said, the horse still had to arrive in Australia, still had to
it's not that risk.
Get the tick of approval. And unfortunately, the vets didn't pass him to run in the Cox Plate in 21. So we had a lot of frustration. We had to wait a whole 12 months. But had that not happened, it's a sliding doors moment, then I don't think we would have had the ultimate success and reached the Holy Grail in 2022 when we won the Melbourne Cup. And again, coming back to trying to give you the right analogy of horse racing and startups, if you just invest in one horse, or you just invest in one startup, you're not going to have the ultimate success. Yes, you can be very lucky, and there's some people, as said, who have had one startup, and it's obviously they ended up being listed or taken out. And there's people I know that their first horse was actually Gold Trip, which is a funny story in itself, where the a brother and sister inherited some money from their late mother and put the whole estate into a share in this horse. So had frustration for 12 months. Right. But again, what I'm saying to listeners out there is, you know, you need to spread the risk and diversify in both the business world and obviously if you decide to invest in a horse.
Absolutely. So you said the word sliding door moment, and it really worked for you in the horse racing world. In the business world, a lot of times I've seen over time that sliding door moment are people that you've met, especially if it's randomly. Has that ever happened to you with people?
Yeah, I mean, you know, it's a crazy world out there, and you know, I'm a big believer, as I said, relationships. I might have said earlier, is everything in life, and it's who you know, not what you know. Fortunately or unfortunately, and I guess that's something for the younger audience. You know, it's sometimes hard for them because it's life experience that will get you to where you need to go, but you have to go along that journey to get to where you need to be, if that makes sense. So for me, you know, you want to give everyone these opportunities. And I'm very much a person that likes to share the love. You know, whether it's horse racing, I don't stick to one syndicator or one trainer. But you sort of network with the right people who have the ultimate success. Similarly in business, if you're now starting to invest in startups, look at the numbers and look at what people have achieved. Now, again, there's a lot of people and there's a lot of VCs and PEs out there and, you know, people from our community like Square Peg and whatever and Rampersand. But not everything is going to have the ultimate success. We know that. So I think you have to go into it with open eyes. I'm very much, you know, of the belief, here's the money, come back to me, you know, in 3 years or 5 years, and whatever happens is a bonus. So you almost write it off.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I think so. I mean,
you're prepared to take
and that's the risk. So you come back to the risk factor, and again, someone like my dad is very conservative and he's 85 years of age. You know, he would like bricks and mortar. I mean, look, I don't buy shares. It's something that I've stayed away from, and I know people and investors have a large portfolio of investments. But for me, everything we made out of the business, we always invested in property because you would always have at least something to show for it at the end. Whereas I guess my personality and being, if you could call me, a bit more of a risk taker despite being an accountant, the reality is that, you know, you live one life. And I think, you know, it's been amazing also people I've met through horse racing, people I've met through my sponsorships of all the different sporting events and football clubs and soccer and basketball. The relationships I've formed from those sponsorships has ultimately then, I won't say made me the person I am today, but it's amazing to see a lot of those people have then invested and backed me in some of the things that I've invested in or I've raised money for.
I suppose it means put yourself in a position where you may have success.
Correct. And if you don't do it, you're never going to know. So you have to put yourself out there. But again, risk versus reward. What are you prepared to lose? What can you afford to lose? And I would never put myself or my family and everything we've worked so hard for in harm's way. But, you know, if you work out what you can afford to potentially lose, whether it's in business or horse racing, and you're not borrowing money to be able to facilitate that, that would be also my advice.
Friends, don't put everything on your life savings on your credit card.
Correct.
Sonney, switching it up a little bit, you really are somebody that walks across so many different avenues of the world. And right now, obviously, there's a lot of division, but I look at you as a potential unifier. Just tell us your thoughts about that, and especially how you're dealing with it in the workforce.
I think like it's a difficult sort of question and thing to analyse. I mean, I've got to have, like all of us, you know, a balanced perspective, and that's I think the most important thing that, you know, I sort of wanted to touch on today. You know, we've got a business at Rendr, for example, which has investors that are Jewish, that are Muslim, that are Christian. We have employees from all walks of life, and all lives matter at the end of the day. We can all feel and believe what we want to feel, but at the same time, we have to be inclusive. We have to consider everyone's thoughts, But there's no doubt, if you look at a business like Rendr, we could probably solve world peace today with who we've got involved. And it just shows that this is how the world can be.
Yeah.
You know, as most people know, I'm not backwards in coming forwards. I'm pretty active and vocal on socials. I've been involved, you know, with fundraising for the ADC and the Click Against Hate program for, you know, a long period of time, because I worry about, you know, our kids and future generations. And you know, what we saw on October 7 last year, you know, most people know, I've been saying for 15 years, and so anti-Semitism is out of control. A lot of people, it was a light bulb moment and people woke up, but for me, it just sort of reiterated what I've always felt and thought. But as I said, I just don't condone any form of extremism on both sides. And at the end of the day, just want a peaceful world. Sometimes to then have to sort of navigate that through business is really important, because you don't know what the other person on the other side of the table you're dealing with, what their beliefs are. But I think having a robust, you know, conversation and dialogue is what's really important. We don't always have to agree on everything. But the fact that we can sit there, talk about it, and then walk away feeling more comfortable about the state of affairs, I think that's what's really important. Yeah,
I suppose dialogue over debate, so to speak.
Correct. And you know, in the business world, we spoke, I think, about, you know, LinkedIn earlier, and you know, there's a lot of people out there that are very vocal on that platform, and if that's what they feel is right and they want to do, absolutely. Whereas others obviously use Facebook and Instagram and platforms like that, or even X, to really express how they feel. So I think, you know, you just have to have that, again, that right balance. That's what's important.
Yep. And it's also leadership, I suppose.
Correct. And, you know, not everyone has to sort of stand up and be an outspoken voice. But I think, you know, again, education is where it all starts. And there's people that I know, that know me very well out there that, you know, I'm happy to listen and learn and take on board everything that they have to say. But there's certain things which I'm also, you know, pretty adamant about too. Yeah. And, you know, that is that, you know, I won't condone any form of extremism or terrorism. And yeah, we need to make sure that, you know, we're living in a world where our children and future generations are going to have a good future.
In closing, any comments for the audience, especially the young people?
You know, look, I think if you've got to have, you know, passion for what you do. You have to believe in what you do. Ultimately, as a younger, you know, entrepreneur who hasn't potentially been in business and they've come out of university, and look, you know, there's some very smart and bright young people who could run rings around me today, but ultimately, and we joke about the old grey hair. I don't actually have any grey hair. I don't have any hair anymore. But the reality is, you know, you've just got to surround yourself with good people. You've got to network. You've got to go to events. And, you know, if you fail, it's, you know, you're going to fail. But don't let that put you off, you know, like keep working hard. And ultimately, you know, success will come to those that are passionate about what they do, as I said. And, you know, want to achieve the ultimate success. There's two sort of hallmarks that I've always sort of prided myself on, and I've tried to sort of teach people. But I think if you use attention to detail and never assume, whether it's in life or whatever you're doing, and you take those things on board, it's always going to stand you in good stead. And it will, I think, separate you ultimately and get you to where you want to be.
Amazing.
And really thank you for your time and for those that listen, but I'm always here if anyone ever wants to reach out and have a coffee. You know, that's part of what I like to do in life and mentor people. So by all means, I'm happy to do that.
Great. Thanks.